And I'm going to talk about something that is one of the best gifts you can ever give, but it's not a gift that they get now. It's a gift of stability in the future. It's a gift of protection in the future. It's a gift for the someday, because that someday will happen for all of us, folks. I want you all to create your own family banking system. Not just because I want to leave my family with more money, but because I want to leave a legacy. Welcome back, everybody. Another wealth webinar, and we're getting close to the holidays, folks. It's almost Christmas time. And you know, the interesting thing is once December kicks in, the person that invented the Advent calendar, or more specifically, Elf on the Shelf, Mr. Chip, purely brilliant. My daughter's 4.5 years old. Every morning she's getting up, she's going down, searching for the elf, going to her little calendar, grabbing her little chocolate or whatever her gift is. It just is so cool because it keeps them in the spirit and, you know, literally keeps them behaving well, because I hate to say this, but you know, one of the nice things is when she's misbehaving, I'm like, Chip is going to see you doing this, and he's going to tell Santa Claus. But for real, like, how many of you, when you were a kid, had such an amazing memory of Christmas? Like, it was just that time of the year that we always waited for. We got excited for. We were cheerful for it. Our parents were around. You were going to Christmas parties. Like, it's one of those things as a child that I really, really, really remember. And I remember the excitement as it built up. And I also had one of those little calendar things that my mom would put things. And this is going to sound silly, but I was big into BMX at one point when I was a kid. And my mom got me, you know, like the stem caps that go on, like the tubes in your tire, just get the little knobby. Well, she got me these aluminum ones that were white. And I remember that morning before the school bus came, I ran outside. There was snow on the ground. I put them on my bike, and I thought I could fly. I thought my bike was so much faster because of these little alloy. I don't even know what you call those things anymore, but I rode that bike up and down the backyard in the snow before the bus came. Anyway, enough storytelling. Let's get into a little bit about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the gift of compounding interest. And I just thought that was a really interesting topic that we could hit as we get close, because a lot of the things that we do in life, a lot of the things we invest in, you know, some are going to work, some are not, but there's going to be some that are going to be staples. And that's, I think, one of the most important things. You know, there's never been a time where I have looked at my policies, my specially designed and engineered whole lives. But today we're not going to talk about specially designed whole lives. But when I look at them and I say, boy, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Stephen, has there ever been a time with your policies where you've gotten your statement and you've been like, man, I wish I never did this. I should stop putting money in this?
That has not happened to me yet, no.
Has anyone that has a policy, a specially designed whole life, ever had a day or a time when they got their statement in the mail and they looked at it and said, I probably shouldn't have done this. This is a stupid idea. Anyone? There might be some people. Oh my gosh, somebody just brought up the Sears Christmas catalog. Oh boy. How many of you sat down with Grandma and Grandpa and went through and circled all the toys you wanted in that? You know, the simple fact that no other company has created what the Sears Christmas catalog was in today's modern times is a darn shame. I mean, that was one of the most magical things. You picked everything. You didn't get everything you wanted, but you always wondered, I wonder what toys I'm going to get. Sorry, I had to deviate from that, but like, I don't know many people that have a problem with any place they put their money where the next year there's more money in that account. So every single year, whatever you put in, there's more money than what you put in. So here's how I want to start this off. I want to start it off by going to the board, and I'm just going to write some numbers down on the board. Okay. And I just want all of you to kind of play along with this. And then we're going to kind of back into this thing, and we're going to do a couple little exercises. So here, I'll do it this way. 2023. All right. My cash value was $56,070.56. Okay. That was 2023. Now let's come over here. 2024. The same thing, the cash value. We're just going to do these right across the line. Okay. The cash value was 64,95574. Okay. So the first thing that if somebody saw those numbers right there on the screen, okay, we got two numbers, 56 64. So you know 64 is more than 56. So I'll just kind of put that on there. It is $8,885.18 more. Okay, that's how much more that is. Now, the one thing that you'd have to really consider there, when you look at the cash value increases, you got to sit there and you got to say, okay, well, how much money was put in premium? Because like, how much did you deposit into that account in order to get $8,885.18, which means my account grew by 15.8%. Would anyone be upset with any place you put your money if that was your math? $8,885 increase, it's a 15.8% increase. But you'd be missing something if that's the only thing you looked at. So now, let me just subtract the premium. So the premium on this, okay, the premium deposit that I put into this account is $6,466. That's how much money I put in that year. So I didn't really make 15%. Hopefully all of you were picking up on that. I didn't make 15% because I'd have to subtract the amount I put in. So if we do that, okay, if we come over here and we say 8,805.18 minus 6,466, that means the account grew by 24,19.18 net, okay? So if we did that, if I wanted to figure out a return, I would divide that into the amount that I put in that year, which was 64.66, which would be, yeah, that would be right. That's a 37.4% increase, okay? That's what it would be. So that's how much money, well, it's not an increase, but that's how much return I made on the money I put in that year. So in other words, this particular account, which I'm going to surprise you in a second, but this particular account, these numbers write off two statements, one from 2023 and one from my policy statement that just came December 1st from 2024. These were my numbers. That was the amount that I put in. That was how much more I made. So a 37.4% increase. It's not too bad. Like, how many of you would love to take and put $6,466 in an account that then at the end of the year gave you $8,805, $885? All of you, right? So the reason I bring this up is I'm not trying to brag about this. Matter of fact, this policy is nothing to brag about. This policy is an old New York Life whole life insurance policy. Now, notice how I did not say specially designed. This is not a specially designed whole life. This is a off-the-shelf whole life policy that your broke-ass brother-in-law will try to sell you, or your broke-ass sister-in-law, whichever way you go, this holiday season. That's what this is, off the shelf. Because back when I was a financial advisor, or in my early career when I worked for New York Life and Nye Life Security, this was one of the products that we sold. And it was called a New York Life Custom Whole Life with a 12-year premium payment period, meaning I can put premiums into it for 12 years and that's it. Now, back then, that's what we did. Today, I would never want to stop putting money into a policy, but that's how this policy was set up. And I started this policy exactly 10 years ago to the day. 10 years ago, and this is how this is how it's going. So I already know that that's something that every single person would do, because why wouldn't you want that kind of a return? The only other thing too that I want to show you that I didn't put up on the board here is I ran some additional math, and I just looked at the growth, because here's what it says, and you, I don't know if you all can see this, but it says during the past year, your base plan guaranteed cash value. Last week, I think it was last week, I did that training here where I drew a picture of a rocket ship. You remember that? And there was booster rockets on the rocket ship. My rocket ship, this rocket ship right here, has no boosters. This is just the base, just the fuselage. I don't have any PUA boosters on this policy, which are paid up edition boosters. So this is just a base whole life. So again, during the past year, your base plan guaranteed cash value increased $6,642. So remember, I put in $6,466. So just the guaranteed interest on this particular account is almost exactly the amount that I put into the policy. So just an interest, I made back almost the exact amount I put in. But In addition to this, your annual dividend, because remember, insurance companies, mutually owned insurance companies, they pay you guaranteed interest in the contract, guaranteed interest. This is an old contract, so it was 4%. So the guaranteed interest I made on this was 4%. Plus, they paid me a dividend. And the dividend was $1,940.63. So if we just go in and we just do the math on that. So if we just I'll show you another way you could do the math. So if we go in and we just take the guaranteed 6642, this is my guaranteed interest, okay? And then I just add that to the dividend, which is $1,940.63. What that would give me is $8,582.63, okay? That is how much my plan grew. Now, I'm not doing year over year. So right now, I'm just showing you just 2024. So everything I drew before, forget about those numbers because I was showing you year over year. Now what I'm showing you is just this year. So then I would subtract out from that the premium, 6466, okay? That's my premium that I put in, my premium deposit. And that would give me $2,106.63 in net growth. Now, when I say net growth, I refer to that as net of commissions, net of renewals, okay? Net of policy service fee, which in New York Life, I believe is $50. And I think it's on the small print in the back. I think they charge $50 for a policy service fee and net of the cost of insurance. I haven't showed you the insurance portion yet. So if I just do that and I take the 2,106.63, and I divide that, and I probably did that wrong, into the premium, which is 6,466. So if I just do that to figure my cash on cash return, I come up with 32.7%. So kind of makes sense. It's about the same as what the year over year was. I'm just showing you differently because in your policies, you might not always have the last year's information unless you're looking at two statements. So when you get your statement, this is how you do it. You just take the interest plus the dividend. Remember, this is the dividend. That gives you your total right here. But then you got to subtract the premium, and then that gives you your net. And then you take your net, divide it into the premium, and that tells you what your return was. So 10 years is how long I've had this policy. 10 years is what it took me to make 32.7%. And does anyone know how much it'll be worth next year? More or less? It'll be worth a lot more, right? So next year, that number goes up. The year after that, that number goes up again. The year after that, that number goes up again. There will never be, ever, in my entire life, a year where that percentage is lower than what it was right now. How many of you want to put your money in something like that? And the other thing that's unique about this, and again, this is just a normal off-the-shelf whole life, and I've done this before on Wealth Webinar, but I like to kind of keep, this isn't the one I did last time was 14 years old. So I have 2 New York Life policies. I don't know how many I have now, 12 or 13 policies or something like that. But these are my oldest, my New York Life policies. The one I did last year is 4 years older than this, but it was significantly more. If I'm not mistaken, I think that cash on cash return was like 60 or 80% in that one, but who's keeping track? I'm just showing you one of these, and this is a really small policy. I mean, I'm only putting $6,466 into this thing. I mean, this is back when I was pretty broke. I mean, I had money, but I definitely didn't have a ton of money, and I definitely didn't want to put a ton of money into life insurance. I know I was a financial advisor, but back then I knew nothing that I know now. Back then I was putting as much money as I could into stocks and mutual funds and ETFs. And if I'm not mistaken, around this point in time, I was just starting to flip houses. So I was investing more money in those kind of assets versus putting money into this stupid whole life. So $570.21 is the amount I put into this a month. But now let me go one step further, and I want to show you one other thing. And this is, I think this is where I get really excited. And it's not where I used to get excited, but the older I get, the closer we get to the holiday season, the more, my daughter, just is a part of my life, and just the why of our lives are our children. This becomes really important. And I'm going to talk about something that is one of the best gifts you can ever give, but it's not a gift that they get now. It's a gift of stability in the future. It's a gift of protection in the future. It's a gift for the someday. Because that someday will happen for all of us, folks. It'll happen for me. It'll happen for Stephen. It'll happen for each and every single one of you. There will come that someday. The day where we go on to meet our maker, the day where we go on to a better place, if some believe that, the day that we will go and graduate to a different place. We will die. And when we do, we have to decide what happens at that point. Now, we can just go through life not planning like so many people do, and they do no planning. So when that day happens, they, well, you know, their last words or whatever, wish I would have done more, wish I would have hugged more, loved more, kissed more, said more, you know, all those things. But in the back of their mind, they're also thinking, I'm leaving my family in a worse place, because if their income was part of that family's existence, their income was part of that family's lifestyle, their income's gone. And, you know, I've been a believer in life insurance for a very, very long period of time, but not just because I want to leave my family with more money, but because I want to leave a legacy. See, this money doesn't just go to my family. So the beneficiary on all my policies is a trust. And I'll explain that in a second, but this money doesn't just go to Larissa or Vivi. This money goes into a trust where I set the rules and I set the whole way that the money can be used. So I'm going to cover that in a second. And there's a unique thing I want all of you to have. So hopefully Stephen or Shauna, you can have this, or maybe you know, Brandon can email it over, but I can give it to all of you. So we'll find a way to get this to you. But I want you all to create your own family banking system. Okay. And what that involves is not just the policies. Okay. The death benefit's great, but listen, like, there's a lot of people that have family members or loved ones that if they got a couple $100,000, they would squander that money away. That money would be gone. They would basically blow it. Or, you know, like, let's just, I hate to say this, but let's just say somebody passes away and their significant other goes out and finds another lover, and now all of a sudden they're just spending your death benefit. That's a hard one for me. I mean, I don't want Larissa to never remarry if I'm gone, but like, I don't want to fund his car and everything else. Like, he might be a nice guy, you know, as long as he takes care of my daughter, if I'm young when I go, but I just really, that just doesn't sit well with me. So I kind of want some rules, right? I want to kind of call the shots. I worked hard. I set this up. I don't want to just give this without any strings attached. And I think sometimes that's the worst thing ever. But here, let me just show you something. So 2023 and 2024 death benefit. A lot of people listen to Dave Ramsey or kind of hear Dave Ramsey say that, you know, your cash value is not part of your death benefit. And, you know, he's absolutely right. So a lot of people are like, okay, the death benefit is $200,000, which is what this policy was. This was a $200,000 plan death benefit. That was the face amount. Okay. Now, Dave Ramsey is absolutely correct. The cash value in the policy stays cash value. When you die, you do not get the cash value. You get the death benefit. But here's how Dave Ramsey would have you believe it. Dave Ramsey would have you believe if you buy a death benefit of $200,000 in a whole life, $200,000 is all your family's going to get. Now, that is the case for most universal life policies, and maybe the case for some IUL policies, and maybe the case for some VUL policies, definitely the case for term insurance. But you see, for whole life insurance, even a normal off-the-shelf whole life like this one, all of them, if there's, as long as there's dividends and from a mutually owned company, are going to have this impact right here. The death benefit is going to go up. So this year, my death benefit on this policy went up by, well, just make numbers up, about $6,000. How much did my policy grow this year? My policy grew by $8,582. But my death benefit went up $6,000. So it's not dollar for dollar. But so Dave Ramsey's right. Your cash value, because remember, my cash value in this policy is $64,000. So let's call 64K is my cash value. So if I started with 200,000 and if my cash value was added to the death benefit, well, then I would have 264,000 in death benefit, but I do not. I have 235,000. But what I'm trying to explain is your death benefit is going up every single year and will continue to go up for the rest of your life as long as you stay on the plan. So I don't really know how to explain that outside of this is just the component of paid up additions, and the dividends that are paid on this, I have them going to paid up additions. So every time I get a dividend, it goes into paid up additions, which some of it goes to cash value, some of it goes to increase the death benefit. So this will be the impact. So my gift here, if I were to go on to a better place now, would be $235,652. That money would go into a trust. a living trust. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there on trust right now, and there's a lot of bad information on trust. There's a lot of companies out there trying to sling and sell trust and trying to get you to buy a trust. Not everybody needs a trust. So let me just make it clear on why you would need a trust, okay? First things first, if you had assets, so in New York State, any asset over $50,000 is probatable. Okay, so now let's talk about that. Probate means the courts get involved with distribution of your estate. That's called probate. So if you wanted to avoid probate, now the death benefit already bypasses probate. So we're not talking about that, but let's just say one of my cars over here, okay? My cars are worth more than $50,000, like, so kind of draw the car. They're worth more than $50,000. So if I were to die, then my car would basically go into probate. Attorneys in the courts would get involved and decide who gets the cars if I didn't have a will. But I don't want that to happen. So what I did is I created a living trust. Now, this is revocable. There are two types. There's revocable and irrevocable. I'm only going to talk about revocable trusts. Okay, we'll get into the irrevocables another time, but for today, revocable trusts only. Revocable means it's kind of just like your bank account. I can put stuff in the living trust, and if I don't want it in the living trust anymore, I can just take it out. There are no, like, the door's wide open. It swings both ways. An irrevocable trust, when you put something in, like if I took this car and I put it into an irrevocable trust, the car cannot come out of the trust. But if I take this car and I change the title of the car to be owned by the Naugle Living Trust, okay, I'll just write that. Now, all of a sudden, the Naugle Living Trust is the owner of the car, but it really doesn't change anything except when I die, whatever this trust says, whatever the language of the trust says is what's upheld. There is no probate. The courts don't get involved. This is the set of instructions. We don't need a court. We don't need attorneys to tell who the money's going to. The trust specifies who it's going to. So rule number one, or reason number one for doing a trust is to bypass probate. Every state's different. You can Google whatever your state is and just say probatable limit or excludable amount on probate. 50,000 is the New York amount. So anything over 50 grand is owned by the trust. Simple. All my companies owned by the trust. Okay, why? Well, because I don't want the courts getting involved if something should happen and the company has to transfer. All my cars owned by the trust, my bank accounts, everything. Like, it's just all owned by the trust. But it doesn't change anything for me. Does that make sense? So that's reason number one. Reason number two, I think, is far more important. Reason number two is so that you have the ability to direct your assets and your money from the grave. Think about that. And just because I can't use somebody else's example, I'm going to use mine. In my family, I have a cousin who was heavy into drugs, bad drugs, like stole from his mom, stole from my mom, stole from my grandma when she was alive. Just, you know, that he was a drug addict. You know, he had a bad addiction to some bad shit. And what would happen is anytime he had the opportunity to get money, he would blow it on drugs. So now think about this. Let's just say you are the parent of a drug addict and you have a life insurance policy and you want your child to get that life insurance because that's your only child. But you know that your child is a drug addict. So what do? Well, you could change who the death benefit goes to, or you could have the trust become the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. So when I die, if this was me, $235,652 goes into this living trust, okay? So now the living trust has $235,652, no probate. But now I do some instructions inside the trust. It says, in order for this person, this child, this drug addict, to get this money, here are my rules. Number one, they need to go through rehab. Number two, they need to show like that they are off drugs for a period of 5 years with, you know, bi-monthly check-ins. When they have passed the test and they showed that they have no reliance on drugs and that they're you know, my dad was an alcoholic, so I can tell you this: once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. I think that just goes without saying. You can't be an alcoholic and then quit and not still have a craving for it. And I know this. I lived this my entire life with my dad. But you know, my dad beat alcohol, but he's still an alcoholic. So that's what I'm trying to say. So if he's addicted to drugs, There's always a chance of a relapse and going back to it. Hopefully never. So in the trust, I could have provisions that say, these are the requirements for this money to become available. Here's how I would do it. Here's actually how I do it. I don't have, my daughter, nobody in my family's, on drugs or that. So how mine says is this 235,000 goes into this trust. If my daughter or my wife, so let's just put Vivi and Larissa over here, if they need money, okay? So let's just say Vivi needs money for a business venture. She needs $100,000. What Vivi would have to do is she would have to do a business plan. She would then submit the business plan to the trustees, of which I picked. And you can pick multiple generations of trustees. So trustees are just people that help direct and make sure that your wishes are upheld with this trust. So Vivi gives the business plan to the trustees review it, and they issue Vivi a loan from the trust for $100,000. So now Vivi's got $100,000 from that. But here was another thing that's in my trust. My trust said that when Vivi was born, she had to have a life insurance policy taken out on her life. The trust would pay for it, and trust would be the owner and beneficiary of it for the max amount allowable. So the trust buys a life insurance policy, a whole life policy on Vivi, funds that policy on Vivi. So just in case Vivi doesn't succeed at her business plan and loses this 100 grand, it doesn't matter, because someday that day will come for Vivi too, where she will go on to a better place. And when that death benefit pays out, it will then replenish the living trust for the amount that she borrowed through her lifetime and make the trust whole. So that then her kids, the next generation, will be able to do the same thing she would. But you see, she learned how to do this because she had all this money in here. Let's just call it 235 from this one policy. She had all this money. She had full access to it, but she had to repay the money. She had to repay it with interest. If she didn't, she knew it was only going to hurt her in the future and her kids in the future. So she learns how to do business plans. She learns how to be the bank. She learns how to be an honest banker, because that's what the living trust requires. There is no better way to teach somebody how to do something the right way than hold a couple $1 million over their head. I hate to say that. It sounds really bad, right? But let me just use any of you. Let's just say I said to anyone on here, I'll pick on Michelle because your name's right in front of me. Let's say I went to Michelle and I said, Michelle, I'm going to give you $2 million that you can use for anything you want. But there are some rules for you to use this money. You need to do this. If you want to take a loan, you need to do a loan proposal. You need to do a business plan if it's for a business. If it's a car loan, you need to show me why you want to buy this car, and you need to show me what your repayment terms are going to be. Or the trust will determine what your repayments are going to be. And then you must repay that money. And if you don't repay based on the schedule you set up. So if Vivi borrowed 100 grand, she said, I'm going to pay $1,000 a month back to the family trust. That $1,000 that goes back just means that every single time she makes a payment, she's got $1,000 more that she can use the next time. And she knows that if she doesn't pay the $1,000 back, what is going to happen is that's going to limit the amount of money she has to use, and she's not going to be able to access it. So Michelle, I gave you access to $2 million. You had some rules on how to take the money. And then when you took the money, let's just say you took, I don't know, $1 million of the $2 million out, and you knew if you didn't repay that $2 million, then you would never have access to any of the additional money. You'd learn real quick how to be a good steward of that money. If bad things happened, what we would do is the living trust would take a policy out on Michelle and make sure that then someday the living trust gets the money back. So I might have went too far with that, but I just want you to understand, like, the trusts are just a set of rules that you can place while you're living so that what you want to have happen happens when you're gone. Does that make sense? Let me pause right there and just see what kind of questions do we have, Stephen. Have you been, I see 29 messages. Are there any questions in there that we got to hit? And then I want to hit Charlotte's.
Lots of really good comments. Hannah Kessler coming in saying life insurance is our love language. I like that. We had Michelle asking, is that what you said, Michelle?
I was just picking on Michelle here about the attorney.
Yeah. So that was kind of the only question. And then we got one over in the Q&A.
Yeah. So let me hit Michelle's, and I kind of picked. So Michelle said, our attorney said that our life insurance policy does not have to be in our living trust because it isn't taxable to our kids on payout anyway. What are the benefits to having it go in the living trust? So Michelle, exactly what I was just saying. In this scenario that I just gave you, the living trust does not own the policy. I own the policy. I mean, and you can actually see it. There's my name right on it. So I own the policy. The living trust doesn't own it. The living trust is just the beneficiary, because I want to make sure that when I go, that my beneficiaries have access to the money, but they can't squander and spend down the money and make it so that everything I've worked for my whole life is all spent down in one generation, so that, you know, that family banking system can't continue to the future generations. And I'll talk about that in a second. So, Michelle, there are times where you would want your trust to be the owner and the beneficiary, and that would be typically in a situation where you're trying to do asset protection, or specifically, Michelle, estate planning. So let me give you an example. Let me change the numbers. I'm just going to do this. Let's just say, Michelle, let's say you had an estate worth $20 million. Okay, that's your estate today. And then you've got a life insurance policy totaling another $10 million in death benefit. Okay, so now what that would basically mean, and I'm kind of leaving a bunch out here, but I'm just going to do it simple. If the threshold, what is it, 28, let's say, I think it's 28 million if you're married, but let's just pretend you're not married. I just got to pretend you're not married. It's like 14 million and change is the exclusion right now. Okay, so if your estate's worth 14 million or less, you do not have to pay estate taxes. If your estate's worth $14 million or more, you have to pay estate taxes. And how much are estate taxes? Well, there's federal and there's state, but let's just talk federal. Federal is roughly about 40%, give or take. Consult with your attorney on this, but if you had an estate worth 20 million, okay, and you had a death benefit worth 10 million, when you pass away, this 20 million would go to your kids, okay? But then your death benefit of 10 million would also go to your kids. So now you've got a $30 million estate, of which your exclusion was 14 million. So if we just do that, okay, so we got 6, 3, 2, you got $26 million, $26 million above and beyond the estate tax excludable amount or exclusion amount. So that means your kids are going to pay taxes on $26 million at a rate of 40 million or 40%. Let that sink in. Just let that sink in. So think about your life. You've paid income tax on every dollar you've made for the most part. When you've bought a car, you've paid sales tax on it. When you sold the car, somebody else paid sales tax. When somebody else sold the car, they paid sales tax. Get the drift. You paid tax on every single thing. And then when you die, oh, you pay tax on Social Security too. And then when you die, if your estate's over a certain amount, you pay tax again. Isn't this a cool game they got going on? So to beat the game, what your attorney was saying is, yes, the death benefit passes to your kids tax-free, but if your estate was like this, you certainly, all you'd want to do is say, no, 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 I don't want that to happen. You would make your irrevocable trust, okay, I'm not going to get into the different kinds, but you'd make your irrevocable trust like an ILIT, okay, which is the most common, and that's ILIT, which is a irrevocable life insurance trust. You would have that ILIT own the life insurance policy and be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Now, because the ILIT owns it and the ILIT's the beneficiary, this estate tax, this does not count. So now in this scenario, 20 minus 4 is $6 million instead of 26 million is what your kids would have to pay. If I'm doing the math right, 20 million was your estate, 14 is the exclusion, 6 million is what your kids would owe. But now let's just say this life insurance policy was for 10 million. So now we take the $6 million that's owed to the federal government and we use the $10 million from death benefit proceeds to pay that 6 million. Your kids walk away with $4 million and a $20 million estate. That's super high level, but I just wanted you to explain, and maybe you didn't need that much detail, but Michelle, that's the only purpose of having a trust own a life insurance contract in most cases. All right, what else we got? And Jimmy Davidson's on here. He's got all these numbers in his head.
Yeah, he said double it for a married couple, but it's coming down drastically in 2026. They did increase in 2025 to 13.6 million, Rhonda said. A lot of people asking where they can get these trusts set up or get more information. So I shared, we have a trusted partner we've been working with for several years now. His name's Brent Carlson. He's a founder and co-owner of Corporate Capital out of Las Vegas. And I know I personally work with them. I know, Chris, you've personally worked with them, and they set up our private money club corporate structure just for reference purposes. But nonetheless, I shared their information over in the chat box too, if anybody wants to schedule a call, or if you just call the 855 number directly, it's actually connected directly to the owner's desk and it's exclusive for our clients. So feel free, whatever's most convenient for you to do that.
And Leonardo, thanks for correcting my math. When I'm doing this on the fly, I'm just trying to just put numbers up there. It's hard to do math, write, and talk. I'm getting better at it, but Leonardo called me out. So it wasn't 26 million that was taxable to your kids. It was 16 million. I did the math wrong. Thank you for correcting that. So still taxes on 16 million at 40%. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. All right, let's see. And I didn't even talk about state estate taxes. So that's on top of that. So Charlotte said, I used my HELOC to fund my policy. So let me just give you some visuals, okay? So this person's got a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. They used a loan from the HELOC to fund a policy, okay? I don't always agree with doing it this way. It's always one of those things you got to just run the math on. So I just want to be clear and transparent about that. Like typically, Charlotte, I won't tell somebody to take money from a HELOC and fund a policy. Now back when HELOCs were like 3%, that wasn't such a big deal. But right now, just like you're saying, the HELOC is 9.25%. So let's just think real here. If you did a policy today, you're going to make between 5.5 and 6%, maybe a little bit more on that gross. That's not net of costs. And you're paying 9.25. So you can already see you're kind of upside down. So if somebody was taking money from a HELOC and using the money from the HELOC to fund a policy, you are upside down. You did yourself a real disservice. So there's got to be a secondary part, and that is now if we took, and I'll just, it doesn't matter, but if we put the money, now we would have to take that money and get that money out working so that we can close the gap between the policy and the HELOC. So this is why I typically don't recommend this, because there's an additional step that has to be done in order for this to make sense. And we have to do the math to make sure that it makes sense, which I'm not going to do today. I'm just giving you the baselines, and use the HELOC for my debt tool or use the policy as a debt tool. That is where the important thing is. So now Charlotte is going to use this to pay down debt. Now, assuming that the debt has a higher interest rate than 9.25, which I would guess that it does, because most debt people want to pay down is usually credit cards, which are going to average about 24%. So right there, you can already see the math would work. So if we took the money from the HELOC at 9.25, put it into the policy to make a gross of 5.5 or 6%, and then don't forget, when we take the loan from here, we got 5%, but we're not affecting this, so that's kind of a wash. So we got a couple factors that we got to do. But here, this would work, because if you got 24% on a credit card you're paying off, hypothetically, we're paying a credit card off, we would subtract the 5, okay? So now we got 19% net. That's our spread, because the 5, assuming your life insurance policy charges 5% simple interest on the loan. So you got 19 minus the 9.25, well, we're good. You're more than good. You're making plenty of money to do that. Now, where's the advantage to this? Well, the advantage is we would take the payments we were making on these debts, and we would either roll them back into the policy or roll portion, how we normally would show it, a portion of the debt payment that you recapture from paying it off comes back up here to service this, which we already know we can, because if it's 24% there and you're 9.25 here, there should be plenty of money to service this HELOC debt. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure enough money comes, whatever the difference is, we're going to roll that money back into the policy as a loan recapture. Notice I'm not using numbers. I'm just trying to show you the flow of money. HELOC goes into the policy goes over, pays the debts off, repayment or the recapture of the debt amounts you were giving away, part of it goes to the HELOC, part of it goes into the policy. Where do we benefit? You might not benefit much at all in the early years. But let me refer back to something with this scenario. Go back to my original numbers here. You remember these numbers? This is 10 years in. Let's just say Charlotte did this, with her HELOC, and the first couple of years were kind of but you got a death benefit, Charlotte. So that's another thing. You got a death benefit out of that deal. So if you just use the HELOC to pay off the debts and just take the money from the debts that you paid off and put it back into the HELOC, that's great. But you don't get a death benefit to protect your family. If you take the HELOC, put it into the policy, pay the debts off, recycle and recapture the 2 ways I showed, you got a death benefit out of the deal. Plus, in the future, because of uninterrupted compounding interest, you're going to have a similar situation as this. Yours will be better than this because yours is probably specially designed. It's not just a normal off-the-shelf whole life. So now, in the 10th year, does this make sense for doing that HELOC? Of course. So you got to think long-term if you're going to use the HELOC to fund the policy. Now, I'm really happy, Charlotte, that you finished, that sentence, that question, with what you were doing being debt, because that is almost always the best thing to use that scenario for, because there is no risk. The debt is yours. You're the only risk. You know, if you lend the money out on Private Money Club, we layer in an element of risk. And now there's a couple factors. If the deal doesn't pay out, now you can't service the debt. So now you created a hardship in your family. So debt pay down using the HELOC the way I just showed is probably one of the only ways I would ever literally give it my stamp of approval, but only after I ran the math. So hopefully that answers your question, Charlotte. And also too, I got to give one other thing. We were talking about a normal HELOC, a second position HELOC. Okay, that's, I want to be clear. I was just talking about like a regular old HELOC that you get. If you had a first lien HELOC that you were putting, like what Joe teaches, where you were putting all of your income into this first lien HELOC, paying all your bills from it, your HELOC becomes your savings mechanism as well. Those are different. And those I like those a lot better. But I just use just a regular HELOC here.
Breaking news, this just in. Are you sick of having your money lying around not doing anything? Well, we've got the solution for you. PrivateMoneyClub.com. Back to you, Chris.
Let's see, is a HELOC a write-off on taxes? I don't know. I'm not a CPA, but maybe Jimmy will give that answer. The interest on a HELOC, I don't know. I just went through this with my CPA and he gave me this explanation. I know interest on your primary home is, I just don't know if it's in second position if it is, but let's see if we can get Jimmy to chime in on that one. Yep, yes, the interest is deductible if used on the house. Okay, now that's an important thing. I hopefully you all caught that. The interest is deductible if used on the house. Notice in those big caps. So a lot of people hear what they want to hear. They have very selective hearing. They hear, yes, the interest is deductible. Oh, okay, great. I'm going to go deduct the interest. But then if you didn't use the HELOC for the house, it's not deductible. There's all these like little stupid little hooks that they put into this stuff. So make sure you work with a good CPA and make sure you're using the money from the HELOC on the house. Thanks, Jimmy. All right, let's see. What's the next one? Vida, if I said that right. Could I capture that percentage again on the scenario you just showed, starting with the 664? So right here, this is my guaranteed interest that I earned. Okay, so you're talking about my 2024 policy right here. Okay, that was the guaranteed interest. So base plan guaranteed cash value increase 6,642. So you got guaranteed interest, you got dividend. That's the total amount that I earned on the policy. 8,582.63, but I put premiums of 6,466, meaning I had a net growth of $2,116.63. That's my net, which is a 32.7% cash on cash return. And I do want to preface, I know that's good numbers, but do you all realize like this is just a normal whole life? The ones that we design for all of you, the ones we design for all of our clients work way better than this. Like this thing, like that's great that it does this and and all that, but the policies we design are way better because this policy, when I first started it, I had no cash value. I put $6,466 in the first year, and how much cash value did I have to use? Stephen, what do you think?
What was it? One more time. What was the number? The
I put $6,466 into this whole life policy, but it's a normal off-the-shelf base whole life.
Oh, probably not. Probably zero.
Zero. Second year, I had very close to zero, if not zero. And the third year, I had a little bit of cash value. So you can see I lost 3 years of making that money work for me because I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. I had no idea how to design policies like we do today. I mean, the policies we design today, they're significantly different than that. I mean,
the advisor made a nice commission though.
Yeah, that was me. And I did get commissions on my policies that I wrote. So like for that question, here's another one. I know this isn't the same numbers, and I'm sorry, this is just one that I have up. But in this one, 111 goes into the policy the first year, and I have access to 101,000. That's 91.74. If it was this policy that I just talked about, I would have zero, and then pretty much zero. Maybe I'd have I would have a little more than zero in this, but anyway, you get the point. I'm just trying to show you the policies we design today are very different than the one I was talking about. The reason I wanted to talk about an old whole life here is I just wanted to show you that, whole life from a mutually owned company that pays dividends is never a bad thing. And it drives me nuts. And this just happened, and I'm glad Hannah's on. I don't know if she's still listening, but Not going to give a name or anything, but one of our former affiliates took the bait from an IUL scumbag, and the IUL person told him that the whole life was garbage and this, that, and the other thing, not get into it. But that person didn't come back to us and say, hey, is this true? Just assumed and took for granted that that person was telling them the truth and we were the liars and the ones doing it wrong. And they got rid of their whole life and replaced it with an IUL. It was a terrible mistake. And I feel awful because I already know the outcome and what that's going to look like 10 years from now. It's not going to look anything like this. It's not going to look anything like this. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that are going out there replacing whole life insurance policies. Now, imagine this, those numbers I just gave you right here. Imagine if an agent, an IUL agent came in and be like, oh my God, you have a whole life insurance policy? We can do way better than that. And they show you some fancy, hypothetical IUL policy, and they make the numbers look good. They make it seem great. And they make the whole life look bad. And you get rid of this thing. You replace this with an IUL. That is a decision you will regret for the rest of your life, but this happens every single day. So folks, if any of you, and we get this question a lot, if any of you have an old whole life, let's just say grandma and grandpa bought you a whole life back when you were a little one, and you're like, should I get rid of it? What should I do with it? Don't ever get rid of an old whole life. Ever, ever, ever. I don't care what it is. I don't even care if it's with a shitty company. If you have an old whole life insurance policy, that thing is gold, and it's like fine wine. Every year that goes by, it will be better. Even if it's super small, the returns are going to be very similar to what I just showed you. But people want to replace them. And the only reason, and it's a sick thing, and there should be better rules in place for this, and literally punishments to the people that do this. Once you replace the old policy, there's no going back. And they're doing it just to make a commission. 99.9% of the time, if anyone replaces an old whole life, it is a commission play solely. And there should be lawsuits against these assholes for doing that. Anyway, I'm going to get off that. What is tie? That's a long question. Do you want to kind of help me with the tie question there?
I haven't read it yet. Give me a minute, I will.
Okay, Ty, we'll come back to yours. That's just a lot to unpack, and I'm trying to keep this thing rolling. Let's see. So Gilbert said, it's a whole life. Each policy has 2,500 cash value. I want larger amount, but have health conditions.
Another question. Yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah. So yeah, that one, there are solutions for that, but whatever you do, Gilbert, don't ever get rid of those original policies. That's kind of what I was trying to say. All right. You want to give me that one there, or do you want me to move on?
Go ahead. We'll come back to it.
All right. So one of the things I want to do is, since we were talking about debt, I want to show you something pretty interesting. And I have this. This is a report. This is a client that we're doing this for. Very simple request. Okay. So this particular client came to us, and he's somebody from this area. One of the few clients that I'm working with from Buffalo. Me and Craig are working with them. They're a high net worth couple. They own some very, very successful businesses, and they're pretty big influencers in the area. But they love cars, which I respect. And they recently just bought a 2024. If Joe K was on here, he'd be all about this Escalade. Okay, so has anyone ever looked at the price of these things? Steven, you ever look at how much Escalades cost?
I do, yeah.
What do you think an Escalade would cost?
A large range, but about 130,000 probably for a decent one.
This blew my mind. It blew my mind. This Escalade was $159,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got all the trim. It's a pretty badass truck, really is. Drives itself. I mean, Joe gets behind the wheel of one of these things and he falls asleep, starts snoring, and the truck just drives him home. It's crazy, but it's a true story. So this is the scenario. And here's how they did this. They bought this vehicle, they financed it, and the financing cost on this vehicle through Cadillac or Chevy or GM or whoever does it is 8.49, making the payments, hold on to your seats, folks, $28,25.98. Okay, so there you go. So now to this couple, that payment, which some of you are like, holy shit, some of you, and I agree, but to them, this is just a tax write-off. This vehicle is owned by their company, okay? Because they drive around a lot, they do all sorts of stuff. So literally they've got this, and not only that, they took the 179 deduction on this car. So they got a big bonus depreciation. Where are we at now? Are we at 80 or 60% on bonus depreciation? It's anywhere between, I just haven't been following it. It's 60 or 80% of the total price of the car, they were able to bonus depreciate because this is owned by the business, used for business. Hence why they bought a big vehicle like a Cadillac. So here's what I said to him. I said, okay, this is great. You're getting this, you got the bonus depreciation. That was your big thing. Okay. And then, they can't write this whole payment off, but they can write maybe some of the interest off, the mileage, all that. But anyway, what I said to them is I said, hey, listen, did you have the cash to pay for the vehicle? And they said, yeah, oh yeah. And I know they did. They had plenty of cash. They could have paid cash. And I asked them, why didn't you pay cash for it? And they said, well, because, we paying for it with the company. We got $159,000, but we could just use that money. We could open additional, restaurants. We could do different things. They just wanted the liquidity of their money. And I said, well, what if you did this? What if you took this truck and you took the money you paid for the truck before you bought it? Or actually, let me actually just explain really how we're doing this. They have $159,000. So what we did is we said, all right, what if we did this? What if we took that $159,000 that you have in the bank? They still have the car loan, okay? Take that $159,000 and we're going to just put it into the whole life. And the whole life that we're doing for them, because they're in New York, okay, they're going to make 6.4% interest and dividend. They call that the dividend crediting rate. Then what we're going to do, okay, over here we got the loan for $159,000. So we'd actually have to put a little more than $159,000 in to do this. So let's just call this, I can't remember what the dollar amount was, and I don't have it. Let's say it's $164, give or take. They put $164 in the whole life, making 6.4 tax-free, and it's protected. And they have a couple kids, young kids. They were very excited about the death benefit. That's something that makes me really, really happy is the more and more, myself and Steven and Hannah and the rest of our team are talking about death benefit, the more people are getting excited about the death benefit because it is a really important thing. I don't think we talked about it enough in the early years, but when I talk about death benefit, especially to a family, especially when they're young kids, they get really excited about having that. They're like, oh yeah, we definitely could use more death benefit. So here's what I said to him. I said, all right, if you continue on this path and you pay this truck off. Now, also the one thing I did not tell you is it was a 73-month loan. Okay, that was also a 73-month loan. So here's what we did. We said, okay, if you pay this truck off over 73 months, you're going to spend $203,470 for that truck. So the truck didn't cost you $159, it cost you $203, which means you paid interest of $44,470.58. Now, the interesting thing was when I showed them that, they were kind of surprised. They're like, wait a second, what? And I'm like, no, wait a second, what? You don't know this? Like, it was right in your loan documents. So, and I didn't make them feel bad about it, but I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, how do you not know how much money and interest you're going to pay? How many of you know how much interest you're going to pay on your car loan? Anyone? Does anyone on here right now know how much interest you're going to pay on your car loan right off the top of your head? Okay, there we go. 60% was that bonus depreciation. Thank you. Stephen, does anyone know how much they're going to pay in interest? No one. Well, they didn't know either, but that's the number. $44,000 is what they're going to pay in interest. So I said, would you like to keep that $44,470? It was kind of a dumb loaded question. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do nothing different than what they were doing. Everything's going to stay exactly the same. But what we're going to do is we're going to change who the bank is. We're going to take the money that they had sitting in the bank. Now, granted, this won't work for everybody. This works for them because they literally have the money sitting in a bank account. Okay, a high interest savings account, which was the biggest hurdle I had to get over was they were making like 4% on this. It's more than that, but I'm just using a number. They were making 4%. So I had to show them better value in the policy than what they had right now. And really the thing that sold that one is I said, do you think this 4% is going to be 4% next year and the year after? And they said, no. I said, you're right, it's going down. So that was kind of an easy discussion, and that would be an easy discussion for all of you. So we put the 164 in the policy. Then what we do is we immediately took a loan from the policy. Loan interest rate for this company is 5.25. Okay, took the loan out, we paid the car off. Then what we do is, let's go back here. We did the exact same thing. We structure with their company a note. So the note is between XYZ company and themselves. Well, actually, it's just between, because they own this. So it's them. I was putting me and XYZ. So they own the policy personally. They lend the money to their company in a note at a rate of 8.49%, the exact same percentage they were paying that bank for 73 months at a payment of I'm just going to write this bigger, $28.25.98. Okay. So all we did is the same exact thing. And we pay $28.25 98 back to the policy as a loan repayment. We recycle and recapture that every month. Now, let me pause. Have we done anything different than what they were doing before? Anything at all? They were making a payment of 28. They're doing this right now, 28, 25, 98 at a rate of 8.49 for 73 months. They own the Escalade now, and they had this money sitting in a bank account earning 4%. What changed? The only thing that changed is where that 164 was sitting. Now, because we took 159 of the 164 out, how much money are we making interest on? Well, if the cash value was 159 and 159 is the amount we took out, we're making interest and dividends on 159 because this loan that we took of the 159 was a loan from the insurance company, hence why the insurance company pays 5.25%. So now let's get into the math. I'm going to bring this thing full circle and then we're going to answer some questions. Here is the outcome. Here's what the exact numbers would be. This is called our debt blaster. We would do this for all of our clients. We can show you exactly what your scenario will look like, doing exactly the same thing I'm doing here, and yours can be far more advanced than one car, but these are the math. This is the math, okay? If we did this exact scenario, well, actually here, Stephen, let's ask everybody, what do they think? How long do you think it's going to take to pay this car off? Can anyone tell me? How long does everybody think it's going to take to pay this car off? This scenario with your bank. Remember, your bank, the only difference here, we're earning uninterrupted compounding interest because everything else is the same.
16 months.
16 months? Well, that's aggressive. What else we got?
3 years.
3 years?
3.5, 4.
Okay. 64 months. So we were going to pay 73 months. We're now going to pay this truck off in 64 months. Okay. We're going to pay a total amount for the vehicle of $160,124.93, which is $21,000 and $21,972.11 in interest. Okay, so let's just focus on the interest we're going to give away. We were giving away $44,470. We're now giving away $21,972 in interest. Okay, but hold on. The cash value in this policy. Now, the one thing I didn't talk about is the premium deposits going in. So there is money going in every year. So that's a little kind of a bit of a caveat here, but they're going to have cash value of $456,408 because I want to make sure this is transparent. They didn't just put 164 in one time. They put 164 in, and I could figure it out. It was like 11 or 12%. So 164 times 0.11, about, we'll call it 20 grand. So they were saving $20,000 a year to make this work. So I also want you to factor that in. So they have $456,000 in cash value. So this is how much cash value they have at 64 months. So now that's not such a bad thing. And they got a death benefit of $3.88 million for their kids. There's the math. Total interest paid, $21,000. Total cash value, $456,408. That's what our software can do. Now, again, I probably should show the illustration, but I just don't have it with me. I was just trying to kind of give you that, but they put the same cash they had in, they saved additional money every single year into the whole life, but they did everything else the same, and that's the result. So $21,000 in interest versus 44, but they got it all back. They got all the money for this car back because all the payments went back into their policy, hence $456,408. All right, Stephen, let's hit some questions.
All right. So I guess the main question is, so I can go tell my wife we're buying an Escalade and we're making money doing it. Is that right?
Yeah, there it is. And listen, I'll just send this over to you. Here's this right there.
I don't want an Escalade. All right. Mike just asked about a term, which is a pretty good question. Thanks to you guys, I have a policy. I'm in the middle of creating policy for my children. I also have a USAA term policy for $500,000 that's convertible. I regularly hear you all talk about converting these policies. Is this something I should consider? I estimate the payment would be about $600 a month, which makes me a bit uncomfortable. Could you discuss the considerations when converting a term policy to a whole life policy?
Yeah, the considerations are really, Mike, you would need a company, like a life insurance company that could design a policy like what we've talked about. I don't know if USAA has that. You could research it, give USAA a call, ask them, do they have whole life insurance? If they do, then ask them to design a policy. They probably won't be able to design something like we do. So probably how I'd look at that, Mike, is I probably would not assume that USAA could convert that policy into something like what we're showing you. I'm not saying no, but I just don't think they do. I've never heard of USAA being a company that would work for what we're talking about, and not even close. So that's the consideration, is you realistically need to use a life insurance company that will work for what we're talking about. And USAA is probably not it. So best thing to probably do, Mike, is keep that policy. I mean, it's a good term. You probably got it for a good price. USAA has great rates. Keep that term policy. And if you wanted to do another term policy with a company that could be convertible into the future, then you would just start another one. And the only reason that might not work is if you had health concerns or health situation that doesn't allow you to get a new policy, then I would highly recommend converting your existing USAA into whatever permanent product that they have. Even if it makes you a little uncomfortable, you want to protect that death benefit and your insurability. But if you're healthy, then probably find a better company to do the term with that would be convertible into something you'd want. Stephen, anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, Lafayette Life, don't they offer conversions from other companies in certain situations? Or
I believe they do. Yeah, I believe they do. So that's another thing is probably, Mike, what you should do, just not to blow a bunch of time, book a call with us. And then what we can do is we can take a look at that term policy. We can see if maybe One America would allow us to convert that term into a policy with them. If
so
they
don't, I think it's Lafayette Life though that does it.
Or Lafayette Life, sorry.
I'm fairly certain. I think the max is, I think the max is 500 grand. So yeah, let's definitely talk about that and see if that makes sense. So we can run an illustration, see what it looks like to convert it, you know, all that good stuff for you.
Holy cow. Do you see what James Davidson's been putting in there for the 179 deductions? If they don't reinstate it, it goes to 40% in 2025, 20% in 2026, and then no longer available in 2027. Wow, that's not going to be a thing. But hey, listen, might see something like that again. What is money amount to start this? Any dollar? Typically, how we talk to people about that when we get you on a call is we'll talk about how much you're saving now. Because usually all we're doing, folks, is we're changing one thing, and that's where your savings is going first. And a lot of people are always asking us to show lower dollar amounts, which is one of the reasons why I use this old whole life, that we started with in the beginning. But just as a general rule of thumb, and this isn't ironclad, but if you're, I don't know how old you are, but I'll just give you mine. It's 10 times your age monthly is usually the minimum that you'd want to consider. So if I'm 47 years old, if I take 47 and I add a 0, that's my minimum monthly. So that's the easiest way for all of you to do that. Just add a 0 behind your age, and that is the minimum amount you would have to put into premium deposits in order for the policy to work like the way we're talking. If you're over 60, it's 15%, and if you're under 20, it's 15%, or 15 times, not percent, 15 times your age, and you just do that with a calculator. So those are the amounts that would, to get started to make this successful. What other questions we got?
I'm trying to keep up, man. It's a lot of.
Oh, no, it's crazy. And folks, sorry about the little pauses here. There's tons of chats, which is freaking awesome. We had over 120 people. Actually, I think there was over 130 people on, but right now I got 115 people. It's just a lot of stuff coming in. We're just trying to make sure, we don't go too deep into too many things without answering all your questions. Let's see.
Yeah, Michael just said, can you explain why the payoff duration was shorter, faster, compared to the initial agreement that was fixed at 73 months?
Oh, because of compounding interest. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around with screens. So we're going back to that example with the Escalade. Mm-hmm. So Michael's asking, this is a great question, which is why I want to get the screen back. Sorry, I should have just left it there. Let's see, not this one, that's the HELOC. Folks, I draw a lot of pictures because this is how my brain works. My brain works in a visual way. And I think a lot of people articulate things when you're seeing them. So the question is over here with the bank, why did it take 73 months to pay off? We're over here, if we did the exact same thing in the policy, how come it only took 64 months? The reason is you've got all of this money, this 164, and then the premium deposits earning interest and dividends on an uninterrupted basis. Remember, when we took the 159 out to pay off the Escalade loan with GM, we didn't take our money. We used the insurance company's money. So therefore, every year we're making a spread, right? So the 6.4 and the 5.2, we're making money, and we got all of our money compounding. Now, take that, and the best example I can give you is that policy on myself, like this policy. Remember, I showed you that the increase over last year was 15.8%. So if you're doing the spread, like if in 1 year, we're talking about 15.8, but my loan interest is 5.25%, you could see I'd be in this scenario making roughly about a roughly about a 10% spread. So I'm making money. I'm making compounding interest. The one thing I think a lot of people miss is they take it at face value. They just say, okay, my dividend crediting rate's this, my loan interest rate. They do the math and they say that's my spread, but it's really not. What you'd actually have to do is you'd actually have to go to the illustration, which let me show you, and I'll just draw this up here while you're all looking at it. You'd look at this and you would say, okay, year 2, I put 11,000 in, but I make 11,729. So that's a 6.63%. So then what I would do year 2, if I had taken this $11,000 out as a loan, that would cost me roughly, I'm just going to say 5.63. I'm just making numbers up, folks. These are not real numbers. I'm just trying to make my math simple. So if I made 6.63, this is what I made. Okay. This is what it cost me for the loan. So this is the loan. I got to find a better way to draw with this. So what did I make? 1%. So most people would see that and they would say, oh, okay, I get it. But wait, no. Next year it's more, because next year it's 12.2. So the next year you put 11 in, you got 12,000. So what is my net? Well, 12 minus 5.2. Okay, I'm just making numbers. 12.2 minus 5. That's your spread. And the year after is more. 18 minus 5.2. 25 minus 5.2. This is a really good representation too here. Remember, my policy was 10 years old and it made 32.7. So let's go down. This is a specially designed one. Here's the 10th year. This thing made 94. You see the difference? Base policy is what I showed you earlier. And everybody loved the numbers on my policy that I showed you earlier, that New York Life 12 pay base policy that had 32.7% cash on cash. You guys were all excited about that cash on cash. But look at, if I had done this with a specially designed whole life, look at my numbers here, 94.77%. That's a big difference. It's because this is designed for cash value efficiency. My policy that I did isn't. It's just a normal life insurance policy. So the answer to the question there is because you're earning uninterrupted compounding interest. And every time I take money out, if it's a non-direct recognition, which this is, if I took all of this money out, if I took 101 out here, 11,000 out here, 12,000 out here, I still have this much money growing at interest dividends. So when I take all of it out, I still have it all in there earning interest because it wasn't my money I used. It was the insurance company loaning me money from their general account. Yeah, and then I love what Robert said. Robert said, plus, Chris, don't forget, you're paying yourself the interest. Great one. Remember, the interest on this stupid loan was 8.49. Who are you paying 8.49 to? Yourself, your bank. Thank you. That's a great one. So not only are you earning uninterrupted compounding interest and making the spread, you're also paying yourself back the 8.49 and staying instead of paying GM the 8.49. That's a huge piece of it. Huge piece. You're either going to pay somebody else or you're going to pay yourself. Make the decision. Which one do you want? Man, that was great. All right. What other ones we got? At what age should your deposit go up as well? Also,
one thing I want to clarify. So a bunch of people asking about 10 times your age on a monthly basis. So just to clarify, that's not like an actual like number you have to do. So what we've done is we've studied this for many years. Obviously, we kind of know what works, where efficiency zones are, things like that. So what we found is that for these banking policies to really grow and be efficient and act as a banking system, you need to be right around that 10 times your age on a monthly basis number as like a guideline minimum. So that amount or more is what you'd want to be looking at. If you can't quite do 10 times your age on a monthly basis, it just might be one of those things where you might not be ready for being your own bank yet. But it's a great goal to set. It's a way to kind of gauge, is this right for you or not? And keep in mind also, like if I start when I'm 41 right now, so let's just say I started one at 410 a month right now, and in 2 or 3 years from now, something happens and, I can't make that premium deposit for whatever financial reason, I can always lower that way down as well. I can usually lower that from 50 to 75% of that 410. So I can always put in a smaller number if I need to. We talk about that number as a guideline. Most people are actually asking, what's the maximum amount I can put into this thing? And there are restrictions on that as well we can talk to you about on one of these strategy calls. So again, I'll put the link over in the chat box. schedule a call. Our money mentors are all Nelson Nash Institute certified infinite banking practitioners. And I've been doing this for many years. They're experts at this. This is all they do full-time, all day, every day. So they'll strategize with you, talk about what you have going on now, what your goals are, what your financial situation is, and we'll start, kind of giving you ideas of what to do.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. That's great. Deborah, I want to hit yours. Deborah Knight said, "Can you deposit $200,000 to start my two grandchildren?" Yeah, this is done all the time. So, Deborah, I don't know whether you'd be able to get all 200,000 into policies on your grandkids, and you'd need the parents' consent. So that's the only thing, which I don't think would be an issue. But what you're saying, yes, like this is done all the time. I've done lots of children's policies exactly the same way. Like I recently just did one for one of my clients where they had, get this right, I think 4 kids, and they did 50,000 each child as a dump-in. And then they did like, I think it's like 50,000 each kid, and then it's like $8,000 each that they're putting in. So it's money. So how they figured this is that it was money that they were putting into 529s prior. So they were funding 529 policies for these kids' college. They heard about this. They had policies on themselves as well. And they said, hey, listen, instead of putting money into our grandkids' 529s, can we just put money into the policies? And we said, absolutely. The only difficult part about that was actually getting the 50 grand in, because that's a lot of money for a child's policy. For you at 73, I wouldn't recommend dumping 200 grand into a policy for yourself unless the death benefit is really, really important on yourself. If this is really for the benefit of the grandkids, do it all on the grandkids, book a call using that link that Stephen put up. Will blow your mind as to what that will look like for the kids. And also, Deborah, if you follow me on YouTube, which is at the Chris Naugle, I've got videos on there showing what I did for my daughter, and that'll kind of give you some relevance of numbers, much smaller numbers than what you're talking about. But anything you do on kids or grandkids, the numbers are going to be outrageously good, like beyond good, especially in the later years. All right, let's see what else we got. 5 years ago, wanted to know the minimum, but yeah, I love this. Me and Tess talk about this all the time. In the beginning, like when she first got around the campfire, her number one word, kind of like, when a child says the same thing over and over, and you're just like, can you say something else? Was, what's the minimum? What's the minimum? How little can I put in? What's the minimum? Now she wants to know, how much more money can I put in? Why didn't I start with more? How much more can I do? Not what's the minimum. And I think that will be the case for everybody. Once you understand how these work, you'll never ask what the minimum is. You'll always want to know what the maximum I can put in. And then from there, you just close the gap on how much you're saving and just keep saving more and more. Listen, there's nobody that just, I shouldn't say nobody, but there's very few people that kind of just come to us and are just like, hey, I want to dump everything that I save into this. They always like put a toe in, right? It's like kind of when you come up to a lake and you're wondering how warm it is, you just dip the toe in there. You're like, all right, that's not bad. Then you put your whole ankle in, you're like, all right, I think I can do this. Then you get in, you put your feet in up to your waist, which is the hardest part, getting over, that part. And then you're in the waist. And at that point, you just dive right in. So some of you, maybe you do. You walk up to a lake, you don't even test the water and you just dive in. Kudos to you. That's the Joe K model. I'm not that guy. I like dipping my toe, going in up to my waist, getting comfortable, and then I dive in. All right, any other questions here? Suggestion, I'm borrowing money. My tenant stopped paying and I don't want to go into foreclosure. I have 2 homes in New York. Suggestion, I'm borrowing money. Privatemoneyclub.com. Now, one thing that Lori said here about that, and I don't want to take too much time on this, but in New York, it literally takes months and months to evict somebody and get them out of your property. So a lot of people do run the risk of foreclosing because when the rent stops and a lot of tenants stop paying rent, the person can't afford to keep the property and they literally get behind on their mortgage and run the risk of foreclosure. New York is just a terrible place to do real estate. Unless you're independently wealthy and you know exactly what you're doing or very experienced, just stay away from New York with rentals. I own rentals here and I wouldn't go to my worst enemy and be like, hey, I think the best thing you should do is buy a bunch of rentals in New York. Yeah, do that. Because it's awful. I'm evicting a tenant. We did such a favor for this lady, and my wife's got a soft spot for kitties. So she had a kitty, she needed a place, she was getting kicked out. None of the new places were going to allow her to, keep her cat. So she was going to give her cat up for, to SPCA. My wife, soft spot, said, no, we've got an open unit, moved her in. In 1 month, the place where she got the cat came and took the cat because she wasn't able to keep the cat. Then she stopped paying rent. Okay. Belmont, which is a social service program that paid her part of her rent, stopped paying us because she stopped paying. So we went through the eviction. We got it approved. Then we couldn't evict her. It's been 6 months going through the courts. And I know what I'm doing, folks. I know how to evict somebody as quick as possible. 6 months. And the last time we went, she was supposed to be out in November. Now the courts gave her till after the holidays. I guess I'm not going to say anything. Gave her till January. She's got to be out in January. And if she doesn't leave, I have to pay a marshal to go there and drag her ass out. I got a Christmas present for her. Let me tell you that. New York's just awful, awful, awful state. Yeah, ho, ho, ho. That's going to be my Christmas present. All right, I'm going to close on this one thing. We still got 107 people. I got a really special offer for you. I normally don't do this, but it's Christmas time and I can't not do this. So this right here is MSTV. We have had MSTV for a long time, but we are literally revamping this thing at a massive level. This is going to be the cool kids club. Let's just say that. So this is a pay to play. Okay, here's MSTV. What we're doing and what we did in the past is we put up all sorts of videos. Okay, so these are not videos that are on YouTube. These are not videos you will ever find anywhere else except for MSTV. They're videos that are basically things like mindset, stocks, and trading, which we're going to expand on this, Money 101, a lot of real estate videos, alternative things that you can do, and we'll keep adding on to this as well. Some life insurance stuff, but I just put most of that on YouTube, so it's not going to be big for that. But retirement plans, how to navigate your retirement plans, how to allocate funds in your, different things to look at in that, self-directed IRAs, how to protect with trusts, different things like Nevada Asset Protection Trust. A lot of people are wanting more info, all of that here. We're also going to have some unique things from Garrett Gunderson in his book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? Those are going to go in here that you're going to have access to. So you get all of this. But the real thing I want to show you in here is not all the different trainings and that. It is the one training that we put in here. Sorry, I got myself back. I gotta go back to the main page here. Get me back because I'm sharing it, so it doesn't want to do it. But anyway, I created what I would call the most comprehensive infinite banking training ever created. I spent way too much money doing this. And I hired crews, I hired filmers, I hired like a person to basically create all the content and the intro and outro videos. So there is 23 hours of content. Now, I know you can get a lot of content. I got 1,000 videos on my YouTube, but they're not organized. So somebody had mentioned this earlier. They were wondering about like, okay, what about, how does IBC work? Or what are some of the advanced training? So in this, there are all different videos. So let's see, I'll play a video in a second, but these are the whole thing. So all these, you can literally go in, you can watch these videos and you can find the advanced strategies of how this all works. In each one of these, IBC for your kids' future. So here's a video for kids and you would just hit it. I'll just play this. It's real short in the beginning here.
When my daughter was 6 months old, I started her first
This is what the videos will look like.
In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how, as a parent, you can set your children up for success in the future.
So
I started my daughter's private bank.
Exactly what it is we're talking about. IBC and 529 college savings plans, IBC and treasury bonds, how to increase your fund deal flow, IBC with private money, case studies of different things. This is a debt pay down case study, another case study. All of these are organized into bite-sized little pieces and little videos. There's 23 hours of content in here. But the other thing, and the big thing that's important about this is for any of you that really like this stuff, you can always join us for Wealth Webinar, but we're going to be doing unique webinars where you're going to have somebody coming on, it might not be me, and they're going to be teaching each one of these strategies in almost like a course. Like it'll almost be like you go for a specific course. There'll be a course on here's how to set up things for your kids. And it might be a 2 or 3 week program. And then another one on how to, what do you do with HELOCs or first lien HELOCs, another couple weeks. And Joe K might be teaching that one. So we're going to have live webinars in 2025 that will be going on every single week. My goal is to have 3 live webinars every week. These are not webinars like what you just went through. They're half-hour, very specific topics, and they're only available for members of MSTV. So here's what I'm talking about. This MSTV offer right now is $19 a month. That is what it costs to be part of this, to get all this content, all the tools. Everything that you see here is exactly what you get. And then in 2025, we're going to have all those free webinars. So if any of you are interested in this. We'll put the link up below and you guys can all jump into that. It is $19 a month, and it's going to be the hub of where we do just about anything. That's where you'll go. $19 a month. You just go in, sign up, and voila. It will look just like this.
And we got moneyschool.tv coming.
Click join, a whopping 19 bucks a month.
Yeah, the experience is not a typical like seminar where you sit in a ballroom or an event center and speaker after speaker comes on stage, and we put on events like that. We attend events like that. I've been to hundreds of them over the years, and those are very valuable in their own right. But to me, over the last several years, the way that Zoom has really taken over and people have become really accustomed to logging in for education. YouTube continues to grow. I mean, we do 6 live weekly free webinars every single week. I mean, there's so much education and training you can get just, at your own convenience from your own home. Now, there's definitely nothing better than getting in a room full of 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people. And that's why we'll continue to do, kind of stage speaking events. We have one Money Game Live happening in Tampa, Florida, March 1st and 2nd. We have Money Tank coming up a couple times next year, a few other events that we'll be putting on. But the experience is completely different. So the experience is about getting together in a very unique location, where this one coming up in February is probably one of the most beautiful and unique places I've ever seen in the United States of America. I've been to 47 states now. But Sundance, Utah. It's Bedford started the resort years ago. It's what Sundance Film Festival started at. It's just a very historic location, and they've actually been renovating the place over the last few years. So they have new hot springs, they have a new spa, they have new slopes and new ski lifts and whatnot. So what we're doing is Chris, myself, our executive team, we're flying in some experts, some multimillionaires. We'll have a billionaire there with us, actually, in Garn. And so we're bringing all these people to Sundance, Utah, to spend 3 days together, just experiencing life. We're going to be going snowboarding or skiing. We're going to be going hiking. We're going to be going to the spa, to the hot springs. We have all of our meals together, dinners together, and every night ends at probably the coolest bar in the country called the Owl. And it's in those settings where you're out like living life, you're having dinner, you're having drinks together. That's where reality comes in, and that's where the real gains are made. That's where you're going to take yourself from wherever you are today to the next level, whether that's a connection, somebody that knows somebody, whether that's a direct partnership you make, whether that's something you pick up or learn or get from somebody else, or maybe you share something with somebody else and help them change their lives. But what happens is you create lifelong friends. And, we say this all the time, that a lot of our, kind of people that watch us online end up becoming our clients, end up becoming our friends, and end up becoming our family. And it's this event, the experience, that really allows that to take hold. And, we've been doing the experience now for what, Chris, since 2021. We've been doing 2, 3, 4 of them a year, but because of some things going on in 2025, this is the only experience we're going to be able to do next year. And it's coming up in February, Sundance, Utah, the only one in 2025. We limit it to 25 people. We've already sold about half the tickets. So highly recommend, if that sounds like something that you think you'd benefit from, being around ourselves, being around Chris especially. I mean, at events, Chris no longer is available to people. You can't just get on a call with Chris and things like that. So we have Chris, we have our whole team, executives, everybody there for 3 full days with you. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's literally come to the point now where like the experience is really the only event, unless you do like a VIP ticket to one of our other events. But the experience is the only event where you get, like, I don't want to just say me, but the entire team the entire time. So, and we're not spending any time except for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in a conference area. Everything is spent out doing really wicked things that, you see on TV, you see on social media, and you're like, man, someday I got to do that. The bucket list stuff. It almost should call the event the bucket list, but it's called the experience. And I'm there the entire time, hanging out, jiving, and I can tell you every single night I will be at the Owl. I'm not going to say I'm going to close the Owl down every night, but I will do my best. That's a tough task because there are some real players at the Owl, and but it's always a fun time. And this is definitely, it's kind of a bittersweet that, you know, we're kind of ending the experience where we began the experience, and it's going to be a beyond a special trip. So, you know, if any of you can make those dates, this would be the trip to not miss. Awesome. Well, I know we went a little over time here, folks. Thank you all so very much for joining us for another wealth webinar. And we're looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. And I'm definitely hoping to see a whole bunch of you next week. Same great time, same great place. Till then, have a good day. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We're putting up tons of them, but I think if you like this one, you'll probably like that video as well. Not only that, I've got a book that I created, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, where we actually show you what the wealthy do in the game they play with money. I want you to have that for free. And if you want to know about all my new videos coming up, click that alert button. Actually, smash that alert button, and you'll be notified every time we put a new video. So we'll see you on the next episode.